The winter wind howled through the Colorado mountains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the bitter cold of 1883 and the even colder reality of Eleanor Hartwell's situation. She stood on the porch of her dilapidated cabin, her thin shawl doing little against the elements, watching as the last of her firewood burned low. 3 months had passed since consumption had stolen her husband Samuel, leaving her alone with 2 young daughters and a debt she could never repay. The knock came at dusk, 3 heavy thuds that shook the warped wooden door. Eleanor knew who it was before she opened it. Silas Kane stood there, massive and imposing, his shadow swallowing the threshold. He was a mountain of a man, weathered by years of trapping and hunting in the unforgiving wilderness, with a beard like iron wire and eyes that seemed to have forgotten how to smile. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Your time's up." Eleanor's hands trembled as she clutched the door frame. "Mr. Kane, please. Just another month. The spring thaw will come, and I can work the land, sell the... I've heard your excuses." He pulled a worn paper from his coat, the loan agreement Samuel had signed before his death. "Your husband borrowed $200. With interest, you owe me $300 now. You got nothing to give me. No money, no livestock, nothing." Behind Eleanor, 7-year-old Mary and 5-year-old Ruth huddled together, their faces pale with hunger and fear. They'd been surviving on watered-down soup and stale bread for weeks. Eleanor had already sold everything of value, her wedding ring, Samuel's pocket watch, even the good quilts her mother had made. "What do you want from me?" Eleanor whispered, though she feared she already knew the answer. She'd heard stories about Cain, about women who'd fallen into his debt and disappeared into his mountain cabin, never quite the same when they emerged, if they emerged at all. Cain's jaw tightened. He looked past Eleanor at the children, then back at her. "Your body is mine until I have my sons." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She staggered backward, bile rising in her throat. You can't mean. I'm 42 years old, Mrs. Hartwell. Never had a woman who'd stay with me, never had children to carry on my name. You owe me a debt you can't pay. This is how you'll pay it." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing a business transaction. "You'll come to my cabin. You'll keep my house, cook my meals, and you'll give me sons. When I have 2 healthy boys, the debt is paid. You and your daughters can go free." Eleanor felt the world spinning. She'd heard of such arrangements in the frontier, women traded like property, their bodies bartered for survival. But hearing it spoken so plainly, directed at her. "And if I refuse?" Cain's expression didn't change. "Then I take this cabin. It's collateral on the loan. You and those girls will be on the street in the dead of winter. How long do you think you'll last?" Eleanor looked back at Mary and Ruth, their thin faces watching her with complete trust, believing their mother could fix anything. She thought of Samuel, of the life they'd planned, of the dreams that had died with him in that blood-soaked bed. She thought of her own parents, buried in graves back east, and how they'd raised her to be strong, to survive no matter what. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" she asked quietly. "I'm a lot of things, Mrs. Hartwell, but I'm not a liar. 2 sons, and you're free. I'll put it in writing." The journey to Kane's cabin took 4 hours through treacherous mountain passes. Eleanor rode behind him on his massive horse, clutching Mary and Ruth, while their few remaining possessions trailed behind on a pack mule. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was larger than Eleanor expected, a solid log structure with a stone chimney and glass windows, built into the mountainside like a fortress. Inside, it was surprisingly clean but utterly masculine, animal pelts on the walls, a gun rack by the door, simple furniture built from rough-hewn timber. There was a large main room with a stone fireplace, a separate bedroom, and a small loft where Kane said the girls could sleep. "The rules," Kane said, standing by the fire while Eleanor and her daughters huddled together. "You keep the house clean. You cook 3 meals a day. You don't leave without my permission. You do what I say, when I say it. In return, you and your girls get food, shelter, and safety. When you've given me 2 sons, you get your freedom and $100 to start fresh." Eleanor wanted to scream, to rage, to fight. Instead, she nodded, her face a careful mask. "And my daughters? They stay out of my way. I won't harm them, but I won't coddle them either. This is a working household." That first night, Eleanor lay awake in Kane's bed, her body rigid with fear and revulsion, while her daughters slept in the loft above. She waited for Kane to claim what he believed he'd bought, to force himself upon her. But he never came to the bedroom. Instead, he slept on a pallet by the fire in the main room. Days turned into weeks, and a strange routine developed. Eleanor cooked meals from the well-stocked larder. Kane was clearly a successful trapper. She cleaned the cabin, mended his clothes, and tended to her daughters. Kane left early each morning to check his trap lines and returned at dusk with game or furs. He spoke little, ate in silence, and continued to sleep by the fire. Eleanor was confused and wary. Why wasn't he demanding what he'd said he'd bought? Was he waiting for something? Building her trust before he struck. She remained vigilant, a knife hidden beneath her pillow, ready to fight if necessary. One morning, about 6 weeks into their arrangement, Eleanor was preparing breakfast when Mary cried out from the loft. "Mama! Ruth is burning up." Eleanor flew up the ladder to find Ruth feverish and shaking, her skin hot to the touch. Scarlet fever, Eleanor recognized it immediately. The same disease had swept through their town the previous year, killing 3 children. Kane was at the door, preparing to leave for the day. Eleanor rushed to him, her fear overriding her pride. "Ruth is sick. Scarlet fever, I think. I need medicine, a doctor." Kane's expression shifted, something flickering in those hard eyes. Without a word, he grabbed his coat and disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. He was gone for 2 days. During that time, Eleanor fought for Ruth's life with the desperation of a mother who'd already lost too much. She cooled the fever with snow water, forced willow bark tea down Ruth's throat, and prayed with an intensity that surprised her. She hadn't prayed since Samuel died. Kane returned on the 3rd day, snow-covered and exhausted, carrying a leather bag. Inside were medicines, genuine medicines from a real doctor, expensive and rare in these mountains. He must have ridden hard to the nearest town and back. "The doctor told me how much and when," Kane said gruffly, handing Eleanor a piece of paper with instructions. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, genuine gratitude breaking through her resentment. "Thank you." Kane nodded and walked away, but Eleanor had seen something in his face, concern, perhaps even fear. This hard mountain man had ridden through a blizzard to save a child who wasn't his, a child belonging to a woman he was essentially holding prisoner. 3 months later, Maya stood in the office of Thornton Ranch, looking at spreadsheets that actually made sense for the first time in her life. James had hired her not out of charity but because she'd proved herself sharp with numbers and sharper with people. She'd started as an administrative assistant, but within weeks, she was coordinating the ranch's community outreach programs, managing schedules, and discovering she had a talent for organization she'd never had the opportunity to develop. Her grandmother's medicine was purchased and consistent. The mortgage was current. Maya had bought a car that didn't require prayers and mechanical expertise to start each morning. But more than the financial stability, Maya felt something shifting inside herself, the constant clench of anxiety loosening, the perpetual exhaustion lifting like morning fog. She'd also met James's daughters, 16-year-old Sophie and 14-year-old Claire, who visited the ranch on weekends. They were good kids, still grieving their mother in quiet ways, still learning who they were becoming. Maya saw in them the girl she'd been before life had gotten hard, and something protective stirred in her heart. One Saturday afternoon, Maya found James in the barn, mending a fence rail with his own hands despite employing a dozen ranch hands who could have done the work. She'd learned this about him: he was wealthy, but he never forgot the work that built the wealth. "I've been thinking about Patricia," Maya said, leaning against a stall door. "About what she did with your kindness." James looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah. I want to start something. A fund, maybe, or a program. For people like I was, working themselves to death at minimum wage jobs, trying to care for sick family members, stuck in a cycle they can't break out of because breaking out requires resources they don't have." Maya's words tumbled out in a rush, the idea that had been forming for weeks finally crystallizing. "I know I don't have much yet, but I can start small. Maybe one person at a time, like you did for me." James smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. "I was hoping you'd say something like that. Come with me." He led her to the ranch house, a sprawling structure that managed to feel homey despite its size, and into his study. There, on a shelf between photos of his daughters and his late wife, sat a large glass jar filled with folded pieces of paper. "The sugar jar," Maya breathed. "Every person I've helped in the last 10 years, James said, pulling the jar down carefully. 63 people, Maya. 63 notes. And you know what the beautiful thing is? About half of them have come back to tell me how they've helped someone else. Patricia's wasn't unique. Kindness really does multiply." He handed her a folder from his desk. "This is a proposal for the Thornton Foundation. I've been working on it for a while, but I was waiting for the right person to help me run it. Someone who knows what it's like to need help. Someone who understands dignity and desperation. Someone like you." Maya opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a complete business plan for a charitable foundation focused on providing emergency financial assistance to working families in crisis. The initial funding, $2 million. "James, I don't have experience with this kind of thing." "Neither did I when I started," James interrupted gently. "But I learned. And you'll learn. And more importantly, you'll do it with heart, which is more valuable than any MBA." He paused, his voice softening. "You don't have to say yes right now. Think about it. But Maya, I've watched you these past 3 months. You're not just good at this work. You're exceptional. And you have something I can never have. You remember what it felt like to be on the other side of that counter, hoping for a miracle." That night, Maya sat with her grandmother at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd opened that life-changing envelope. Elena's health had improved remarkably with proper medication and regular doctor visits, the constant pain easing from her eyes. "Nai, Maya said, using the Mandarin word for grandmother, "do you remember when you used to tell me that we didn't need much, just enough?" Elena smiled, her weathered hand covering Maya's smooth one. "I remember. It's what my mother told me. I think I'm learning that enough isn't just about having what you need. It's about being able to give what others need." Maya pulled out the sugar jar proposal. Someone gave me more than enough. Now I want to help make sure other people have enough too. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but they were joyful tears, proud tears. This is what I came to America for, she whispered. Not for money. For this, the chance to help, to build something good, to make the world sweeter. You do this, Bao Bao. You make the world sweeter. 1 year after that midnight shift at Rosie's Diner, Maya stood at a podium in a community center in the heart of her old neighborhood. Before her sat 200 people, some she'd helped through the Thornton Foundation, some who'd helped others after being helped themselves, some who were just learning about what she and James were building. The Thornton Foundation had assisted 47 families in its first year. Medical bills paid. Evictions prevented. Cars repaired so people could get to work. Education costs covered. Not handouts, but hand-ups, strategic interventions that broke cycles of crisis and created space for people to build better lives. But the real magic wasn't in the numbers. It was in the stories. There was Marcus, a single father who'd received help when his son needed surgery. After recovering financially, Marcus started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring kids who'd lost their fathers. There was Diane, a nurse who'd been struggling to care for her disabled veteran husband while working night shifts. The foundation had helped with respite care and medical equipment. Now Diane was training to be a patient advocate, helping other families navigate the healthcare system. There was Robert, a mechanic who'd received help with his own medical debt. He now donated 1 day a month to fixing cars for free for working families who needed reliable transportation. The kindness was multiplying, just as Patricia had said it would. And Maya was learning that being on the giving side of help was just as transformative as being on the receiving side, maybe more so, because it required her to stay vulnerable, to remember, to never lose touch with that 20-year-old girl who'd been so tired she could barely stand. I want to tell you about sugar jars, Maya said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the emotion swelling in her chest. James Thornton has a jar in his office where he keeps notes about people who've added sweetness to his life. People who showed up with kindness when he needed it most. And for 10 years, he's been paying that sweetness forward. She pulled out her own jar, smaller than James's but growing. This is mine. Started 3 months ago. It's got 32 names in it already, 32 people who've shown me that humanity is bigger than hardship, that compassion is more common than cruelty, that we're all walking each other home through this difficult, beautiful life. Maya's eyes found James in the crowd, sitting with Sophie and Claire, who'd both started volunteering with the foundation. She saw her grandmother, healthy and smiling. She saw Rosie from the diner, who'd given Maya extra shifts when she'd needed them most. She saw faces new and familiar, struggling and thriving, all connected by threads of kindness that were weaving a net strong enough to catch anyone who fell. Here's what I've learned this year, Maya continued. We're all sugar in someone's jar. Every smile to a stranger, every patient word to a frustrated customer, every moment we choose kindness over convenience, it goes in someone's jar. It sweetens their day, their life, their belief in humanity. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. And when someone helps us, when someone sees us and our struggle and chooses to ease it even a little bit, we're put in their jar. But here's the beautiful part, we don't have to stay in the jar. We can overflow. We can spill out into the world and sweeten everything we touch. Maya held up her jar, and the light caught the papers inside, making them glow. So here's my invitation to you, start your own sugar jar. Put people in it. Put moments in it. Put every kindness you receive in it. And then let it overflow. Help someone else. See someone else. Be the miracle you needed when you were desperate. She set the jar down carefully. A year ago, a man I'd never met walked into a diner at midnight and saw me, really saw me. He whispered that he wanted some sugar, so he was having me tonight. And I almost misunderstood. I almost thought he wanted something from me. But what he wanted was to give me something, the gift of being seen, being valued, being helped with no strings attached. Her voice cracked, but she pushed forward. That gift saved my life. It saved my grandmother's life. And now it's saving other lives, because kindness multiplies if we let it. So I'm asking you, let it multiply. Be someone's sugar. Fill someone's jar. Overflow into the world. Because we're all tired. We're all struggling. We're all doing our best with what we have. But together we have enough. We are enough. And we can make this whole world a little bit sweeter. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. People stood, some crying, some smiling, all connected by the understanding that they were part of something bigger than themselves. The Sugar Jar Fund wasn't just about money. It was about remembering that humanity was meant to be humane, that prosperity was meant to be shared, that the strongest among us were those who helped others stand. After the event, Maya found James outside, looking up at the stars that had just begun to appear in the deepening twilight. "Thank you," she said simply. "For seeing me. For saving me." James shook his head gently. "I didn't save you, Maya. I just gave you the space to save yourself. There's a difference." He smiled at her. "Besides, you've given me something too. My daughters have someone to look up to who isn't their old man. The foundation has a heart because you're running it with yours. And I got to witness someone discovering their purpose. That's worth more than any amount of money I could give away." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people whose lives had intersected at exactly the right moment in exactly the right way. Then Maya spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I'm going back to Rosie's next week. Going to have a slice of pie and leave an envelope for whoever's working the counter that night. Someone who looks as tired as I was. Someone who needs to know they're seen." James laughed, a warm sound that carried on the evening breeze. "The jar overflows. The jar overflows," Maya agreed. And somewhere in Texas, in a diner that smelled of coffee and pie, a new waitress was serving customers with grace despite her exhaustion, not knowing that tomorrow her life would change, that someone was about to see her, that kindness was about to multiply again. Because that's what sugar jars do. They overflow. They sweeten. They transform bitterness into hope and strangers into family. The world needs sugar, Maya thought as she drove home under that vast Texas sky. And we're all sugar in someone's jar, waiting to overflow.